Okay. Hello, everyone. This is attorney Robyn McCoy and attorney Rita White with Robyn Legal. And this is May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. So happy Cinco de Mayo, everyone. And Rita White is our illustrious president of Black Women Lawyers of Michigan. I'm the vice president. And she'll be finishing up her term, and she's been doing some wonderful things. And so I said we definitely wanted to get her on the show so we could talk to her about her career and her work that she's done as president of Black Women Lawyers in Michigan. She's also been a past president of the Vanzetti Hamilton Bar Association, which is the Black Bar Association for Washtenaw County. So Rita, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, and so I'm, looking at your bio. So you were, raised in like the Ann Arbor area. Went to U of M. You were a track star. I did track, and so you were a track star, and you sing. I know you have a band, Soul Tivity. I was in the band before. Maybe I'll come back. I don't know sometime, but I'll be a backup singer. And then you went to Wayne State Law School, and I know you worked in the prosecutor's office for about 9 years, and then you've been in private practice for about 10 years. So you have done a lot. And so why don't we start with telling the audience, like, what motivated you to become a lawyer in the first place?
Well, hello, Robyn. And Robyn is a very illustrious our vice president. She's wonderful. She's done great things and really helped move our organization, Black Women Lawyers of Michigan, Women Lawyers of Michigan along. She's amazing. So I thank her. Thank you for inviting me to meet with you and have a conversation with you on your Robyn Legal. Now, with regards to me and why I wanted to become a lawyer, or what really inspired me to become a lawyer, is I was always a very outgoing, high energy, talkative person. And I just recall when I was in elementary school, of course, I'm sure you and many other people would have this experience, is when the teacher asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's interesting, about 5 years ago, I went into my parents' basement and they were showing me kind of the artifacts. I kind of title them artifacts from my past and from when I was young. And there was a poster that I pulled up of a big kind of an overview, a summary of what I wanted to be. And it was very interesting how the main topic of career that I wanted to pursue was be a lawyer. I've always been a very, I guess, a diplomatic person, but I've always been a very debatable person. My mother, she worked as a social worker for the state of Michigan for 30 plus years and retired in that position. And I would actually follow her when she was a social worker to court. She worked in the child welfare system, where she had to remove children and go to court to petition their temporary or permanent removal based on child neglect. So I watched that, and I really just observing the court and observing what the court was doing to help better people's lives. That was my main goal, is to help better people's lives. And now that I just had that goal my entire life, and I just pursued it. And once I proceeded with college, because initially I wanted to become a veterinarian. But just the fact that I was really passionate about really wanting to help the community and community members by advocating for them, as I, through my life and through my experience, just saw so much injustice and things that happened in the community that really we, as especially Black women, we need to help represent our community and Black men. So that was one of the main factors as to why I always had the goal and the vision to become a lawyer.
Okay, and then what motivated you to go into criminal justice and become a prosecutor?
Well, upon my last end of my studies in law school at Wayne State Law School, I took upon an internship. I engaged in an internship with the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. Now, be mindful that I had never had any courtroom experience, been in a court actually litigating or handling cases. So I took on the internship in around early May, when it was getting close to graduation. And through that internship, just having that experience of being in court and seeing individuals and understanding the law more and prosecuting individuals and representing victims, it became a goal after that for me to actually move into criminal law. Just what I saw and what I really got to experience, and just the fact that once they threw me, and trust me, I was thrown in court because I worked in preliminary examinations as my first experience. I was thrown in a court, thrown there to litigate cases, thrown there to represent the state of Michigan. Just the litigation aspect really, really spurred my interest in becoming a criminal defense attorney and just seeing what's going on in our system that really needs to have proper representation on both sides.
Okay, and then so I know from looking at your bio that you had a major. It was biopsychology. What made you choose to have that as a major when you were in college?
Yes, psychology and those underlying areas of social work, just everything that really involves the mind. That was always a very important factor to me, especially when I followed and shadowed my mother in court and handling her clients, and just seeing the dynamics of how much the brain plays a role in your overall functioning of life. That's why I went into psychology. And I've always been I was always active in high school in biology and science. So I wanted them to be connected. So that's the main purpose and reason why I wanted to go into psychology, because I also knew that that would be a good underlying degree to have to go into the legal field. Because as we all know, especially as lawyers, we also have a social work hat on our hands with some of the types of areas we
Right.
do.
Social
So
work, therapist, counselor.
yes. With criminal law, juvenile law, family law, we have to have that piece of expertise in a way. And so that's part of the reason why I made sure that my underlying degree was psychology going into the field of law in practice and studies.
Okay, and then I know you also spent some time, was it clerking with Judge Denise Page Hood? So what was that like?
That was back in around 98, 98, 99, where through law school, there were opportunities to take on voluntary judicial clerkships. And in terms of being a judicial clerk or lawyer, intern for a federal judge. So it was very intimidating at first, but I got into it because I really wanted to expand my areas of just knowledge in terms of learning different areas, because I was brand new law student. I was a law student. And I think it's always good to really experience and experiment and learn different areas before you decide where you want to first move into post graduation from law school. So when I interned in the before Judge Denise Page Hood, it was a very, very just amazing experience. The judge was the best judge. She was very nice, very calm, very balanced and fair. That she knew where I was at my stage in my career, and she was a very strong mentor for me. And believe it or not, to this day, 20 plus years later, we still have a very strong relationship. And she still is my mentor. And I think that's important. When you start out of law school, it's always good to just grasp opportunities, because you don't know how long the person that actually offers you that opportunity will last in your life to help you move more and more and understand more and learn more about the legal field and develop good relationships in the legal community.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so you worked as a prosecutor, and I know that you did appeals. And can you tell the audience and any aspiring lawyers, like what's the benefit of having that experience as you've worked as a litigator, like going into the court, and what's the benefit of being an appeals attorney?
Well, the main benefit about being an appellate attorney is the fact is, as a trial lawyer, you have to understand the law. You have to understand the most current case law and what has been reversed, etc. And you also have to connect when you have arguments, because in court, the main purpose of an attorney is to argue on behalf of their client, especially as a defense attorney. And we all know as lawyers, we have to have backing with most in all of our arguments. So I think it's very, very it's a very pertinent piece of area of law that is good for any attorney to be involved in or be experienced in, because they all come together. So as an appellate attorney, I do handle appeals where I primarily represent defendants or incarcerated individuals that are looking to withdraw their plea or set aside their plea, or basically contest their not guilty verdict. And again, when I have that experience as an appellate attorney, when I'm in court representing my clients that are up for trial, when I see cases, when I see reports, and when I compare them to cases such as cases involving bad stops, no probable cause to stop a person. You have to know what law applies that would actually either be a move into the direction of a motion to quash or a motion to dismiss based on these factors. And if you don't do appeals, you're not going to be very up to date, consistently have access to Westlaw to be able to understand what these factors in the police report you're reviewing could actually be challenged. So it's so important because you can't just go up to court and say, Your Honor, I don't think he's guilty because he walked across the street. The judge is going to want case law to back your argument, for you to have your argument back. So it's always good to just be very up to date on the case law. And that's really all you're mainly doing with appeals. You're researching case law, then you have a case that there are issues that you want to appeal, but then you're using the case law that you've researched that is relevant and applies to the situation that you're dealing with on your appeal or your actual trial case that you can use to help, basically represent your client's freedom.
Okay, and then I know you did 9 years as a prosecutor, and then you've been practicing as a criminal defense attorney for 10 years, and I know you do juvenile and family law. What was it like going from being a prosecutor to being a criminal defense attorney? Like, can you tell the audience like what are the differences in the experiences and what you observed?
Well, I think one of the strong benefits of being a prosecutor is that when I was as a prosecutor, I worked in almost every unit in the prosecutor's office. And the main benefit was while working, I was in court. And while in court, I was able to observe consistently, regularly, defense attorneys do their work. And so that gave me a kind of a head start in terms of working as a defense attorney. However, there are a lot of ins and outs to working as a defense attorney that are untold, uncommunicated, or untalked about that you learn as you go. So really, what I think was the benefit is the amount of experience I had working as a prosecutor to really be able to work with clients on the other side. And people may think as a prosecutor, you have the prosecutor's head that you're thinking, oh, everyone should be guilty, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not necessarily true as a prosecutor. And I'm sure many prosecutors have the same mindset that they're looking for what applies and what is applicable in the case to either find the person guilty or not guilty. So as a defense attorney, the fact is that I was a warrant prosecutor, I was a trial prosecutor, I was an appellate prosecutor, I was a felony non-support prosecutor, that in terms of trying to help resolve cases in favor of my clients, I think that tool or experience I had was very, very, very pertinent to my ability to practice criminal law in a more favorable way to my clients. Because as a warrant prosecutor, as all of these other hats in the prosecutor's office that I played, I understood, especially if I was working directly with defense attorneys to try to resolve matters, I kind of had a good hand on the nuances of how to negotiate a matter, knowing what the actual underlying factors that would help my client better than not. That I think what I learned and brought from the prosecutor's office with my knowledge, I think that was a very, very beneficial piece of me transitioning into the prosecutor's office. So that's the thing, because I tell my clients that, I was on the other side giving offers, but now I'm trying to obtain offers. And I think it's just good that I know the mindset of how a lot of prosecutors will work in terms of trying to negotiate matters and getting the best offers such as possible. So I think it's just the fact that I had that much experience of working as a prosecutor, then transitioning into a defense attorney, it was a benefit for me and my clients because I know the workings of how the prosecutor's office works to try to have matters resolved.
What about working in the juvenile court? Like, because I know, and then, well, yeah, what has it been like working in the juvenile court, representing parents and, on neglect matters and children on delinquency matters?
As a juvenile prosecutor, I was a juvenile prosecutor for about 2.5+ years. And I was primarily, as the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, they only have basically jurisdiction to work in the juvenile delinquency division. So as a prosecutor, I worked in the delinquency division where I was pretty much running multiple dockets one at a time. So that was really where the transition came into to start working juvenile cases. However, as a private attorney, private attorneys work the whole juvenile welfare system. They represent clients. And what I did not have experience working in was child welfare. So that was a learning curve when I first began my private practice. But the fact is that now I'm doing both. And right as a child welfare attorney, I handle juvenile cases with delinquent matters plus child welfare. I also handle child welfare appeals. And I think the fact is that I'm very passionate as a prosecutor, I observed a lot with juveniles. And sometimes people, I talk to different colleagues, and working in the child welfare system, juvenile and child welfare, it could be a very emotionally taxing area to work in. And the fact is that given the fact that I grew up watching my mother work with children, and her main purpose was to make sure these children were balanced, well, and taken care of, and have at least some type of thriving future. And as a defense attorney, that's my main goal with parents, with children, is to make sure they are put in a situation where they can thrive and they can actually be a person, a citizen in this community that can live and not have to deal with any type of labels, targets, and be able to have resources to be able to be successful. So that's my main goal. And I just think with our system, clearly we see there's a big imbalance with minorities versus majorities. And with my experience working in the juvenile court, there's more African Americans, minorities in the system having their rights petitioned to be terminated, or in the juvenile delinquency area. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to continue working in the area of child welfare, because there needs to be representation, especially with us African American attorneys, to make sure our litigants, our clients are actually represented fairly, because there's so many holes in the system that a person could get lost in, especially a minority, that once I saw as a prosecutor, the numbers and what was occurring with a lot of the people that I was prosecuting, as a defense attorney, I knew I had to stay on that, because it's very important that these children and these parents are protected and they're guided, especially the parents, because when they get into the child welfare system, most parents, they don't know what's going on. They don't have a handle on the process, and that can make them falter. So with my experience on both sides, I've just used that to make sure I fight for my clients, I fight for their welfare, and make sure as much as possible that they keep their families preserved and intact.
Okay, and so Attorney White, can you tell the audience too, like, what made you decide to go into family law? Because as you and I both know, because we do family law, we do a lot of the same stuff: criminal, family law, child welfare, delinquency. Family law for lawyers, ladies and gentlemen. Most lawyers do not do family law. It's no joke. So Attorney White, what motivated you to go into family law?
Well, as I said before, I have a social work gene. My mother was a social worker, and I inherited that by wanting to go into psychology, and that's been one of my main underlying assets as an attorney. And as we see, family law, child welfare law, they're pretty much intertwined, and a lot of it has an underlying psychological aspect to it. And so, in terms of family law, I think it's even more beneficial that I have the child welfare experience, because family law and child welfare can overlap. They can overlap. And the way I've been, able to work with parents and families, it's a little different. It's a little different perspective in family law, because we're dealing with divorces, parenting, parenting issues, parenting time issues, paternity issues. And I just think really overall, as I discussed before, I am a very balanced person, and family law can become an area that you can some people can't handle it, because you're dealing with a lot of matters that don't involve the law, but you're dealing with matters that kind of come into the law, such as parents calling you about the father of my child didn't pick up the child, or he picked up the child, or he's trying to attack me, et cetera, et cetera. You can't use case law just to tell the dad not to come into the house, but you have to learn how to work and mediate the situation. And with all my experience, that's become a very strong asset that I've developed. So I think it's very important that people that with family law, they have that balanced temperament, because you're going to get a lot of emotional issues out of it that it could come to you. But based on my experience in dealing with a lot of this for so many years, these issues, I'm the type of person that can handle families and ultimately know what the goal of the family is to accomplish, even though it may irk you or what they're coming at you with. You already know they want to keep their families together. They want to be happy. And given the fact that I also made sure that I developed the extra experience in family law, because I was working as a prosecutor, I was seeing minute family law situations such as felony non-support, where I prosecuted fathers and mothers who failed to pay their child support. And one thing I saw in that aspect, along with carrying over to working in the family law sector, because I work for the Coleman A. Young, I have a contract where I actually represent families and represent parents and represent people in front of the court matters, custody matters, support matters. One matter that I really took strong notice of is the majority, literally the majority of litigants that came into court were Black.
Right.
And that's one issue, is we need to make sure we represent our people. And it's very important because I see so many, and they come in, and it's good because I've noticed that when you talk to them, they know we are from the same culture in a way. So they understand you. We can talk to them. We understand them. And I think it's so important because a lot of people in our system get lost, even the family law system. And it's important. So that's a major prominent reason why I made sure to continue and include in my practice family law, because there needs to be representation and strong representation in that area.
Right. And can you tell the audience, I know you're active with several bar associations, Women Lawyers in Michigan, the Vanzetti Hamilton Bar Association. You're the president of Black Women Lawyers Association of Michigan. And so for any lawyers, new lawyers out there, can you tell them what do you feel are the benefits of being active with these bar associations? Also the National Bar Association, we're both members. I finally got you to join. You're a member of the National Bar Association. Shout out to the National Bar Association, created in 1925. So what are the benefits of being involved with the bar associations?
Well, lawyers, as you see, are inherently social beings. We talk in court, we argue matters in court. So for the majority of us lawyers like to communicate and socialize, either in the court or outside of the court. As a prosecutor, because I was a prosecutor, I was in a room in my office, a four-corner office, or I was in the courtroom. I had no connections to pretty much any association that was legal oriented. So what I noticed, and that I didn't know, I just saw them, lawyers, but I didn't know any of them. When I transitioned into private practice, I became involved. First, I became involved in the Vanzetti Hamilton Bar Association, which we have the past president, very founder pretty much, Robyn McCoy, Attorney McCoy. So I became involved in Vanzetti. And one thing I just noticed is that you learn so many things, you meet so many people, and it opens your horizons to the legal network. And I think it's so important because if you're sitting in your room trying to find a job or just trying to find opportunities or just trying to figure out where you want to go in terms of your legal career as a new attorney, if you're if you're researching going on LinkedIn or some website, that's not going to really broaden your horizon. So I think one of the main benefits of being part of associations is the networking aspect. You meet people, you talk to people. They give you the inside, outside of what's going on in the court systems, what opportunities there are, and you develop friends, you develop colleagues. And personally, as when I came out of my practice, I didn't know Attorney McCoy. We didn't know each other like that. I would see her in court and I would just watch her like, wow, she's doing her stuff, wow. But I never knew her. The way I got to know her and get to be friends with you is through basically becoming involved in associations. And so associations can open up a lot of opportunities. For example, this upcoming Sunday on the 16th with the Black Women Lawyers, me and Attorney McCoy have been working together to organize special presentations for half of the actual meeting, which we have an hour of the general meeting, and then the next hour is a special presentation. We've been able to put together a lot of presentations that have really helped our members learn about different issues in the community, meet different people, meet very important people. So for example, this Sunday, this May 16th, we're going to be bringing in three Black attorneys that have managed to basically, crash or smash the glass
ceiling.
Glass ceiling, exactly. And they're going to talk about their experiences and their advice in the area. And if you're not part of those associations, how would you be able to speak with someone and possibly have a chance to directly speak with that person regarding opportunities that they may be able to provide to you with regards to what they're employed in or working in? So it's just so important to just get involved because it really opens your horizons. And that's why I don't like seeing attorneys, especially when I was a young baby attorney, that they were about to leave the practice because they had no resources to find any opportunities. And so Black women lawyers in these organizations, this is the hub. This is the hub that you can really find people, get to know people, learn people, talk to people to see really what is out there in the legal field that you would be most interested in.
Right. I know too. We're also members of the Wayne County Criminal Defense Bar Association, and I, that has been a group that's been very helpful with where we have we either mentor younger attorneys or we're mentored by some of the more seasoned attorneys on cases, and we have a camaraderie. I actually miss. I know we're in a pandemic. I miss the attorneys lounge where you could come in there, and if you needed guidance, like I've had some trials and I would need guidance. I've talked to Lillian or Luther, and I could get input from other attorneys about case strategy, things of that nature. And I know we are meeting virtually, and we have our new president Lillian and vice president Gabi, and they're doing a thing. They've been really doing a thing during the pandemic. So yeah, I definitely think I agree with you that being a part of a bar association can make a world of difference. With the National Bar Association, they've been doing some really good programming and tackling and encouraging people to apply for federal judgeships, to work in the Biden administration. They've been, I think it's a matter of, again, sharing resources and networking. And the National Bar was created because the ABA was initially not, the American Bar Association, that's the group for all lawyers, was initially not letting Black attorneys be a part, come to the party, come to the group. So we created our own group in 1925, and you have some high profile lawyers. We've had Ben Crump come and talk to us for Black women lawyers, and we are going to be reaching out to Lenita Baker, who is the lead attorney on the Breonna Taylor case, to come talk to our group as well. And you've got our current president, C.K. Hoffler, who's just doing a thing, active with all this stuff with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And can you tell the audience, I know you've been a participant with some of my programs on what to do when stopped by the police, but can you give us some tips? With, again, you've got that duality because you've been a prosecutor and a defense attorney. So coming from that perspective, let's start with when the police come to the house. Like, what are your tips to the audience of how they should handle the police coming to the house?
Well, as we know, there's very stringent laws in terms of police coming to a person's house. No, a police officer does not have an absolute right just to either knock on your door or bust down your door and enter without any basis. So the main issue is if a police officer comes to your house, you have to kind of play it. You have to play it on a balancing act. Everyone has peepholes, everyone has windows. If you see a police officer come to your house with guns and machetes, or not machetes, but guns, that's when they have to have probable cause, and they have to show a warrant. They have to have in their hand a warrant, unless there's exigent circumstances such as crime is afoot. So you have to be just very careful. And if they do manage and claim that they have exigent circumstances basis to get into your home, you got to be very calm, collected, and it's good that you just try to just basically put on a good just basically your body language is very non-threatening, because unfortunately we have a lot of situations where there's so much profiling that once an officer looks at someone, observes them, sees who they are, then that's when they react. We have to be more of a proactive, take a proactive stance in terms of understanding how to basically carry yourself with a police officer when they come in. And based on you evaluating their state of mind and body language, you have to protect yourself. So there's a lot of factors that we need to look at, because there's, as you see, not everything goes 100%. There's so many times when there's a lot of things that are done illegally, and that we just have to make sure we play our strategy to avoid any possible way that we have to suffer any danger ourselves.
And when you say exigent circumstances, for the audience who may not be lawyers, so that's like if the police are chasing somebody and the person or maybe it's a relative, you're staying with you, and they just committed a crime and they run into your house.
Yep.
And they follow the person into the house.
Yes.
Or there's a domestic violence situation and somebody in the house has called the police. That's an emergency, so they can gain access. They don't need a search warrant for that. So let's turn to a scenario like, let's say we're walking down the street and the police approach us. What is your suggestion about how to handle that?
Well, there are laws that you do have the right to ask them, like, what their title is, what their position is, who they are, and that you have a right to definitely not speak to them if an officer comes to approach you, unless they announce that they saw drugs or a gun on you and they have basically they're placing you under arrest, you got to do what you got to do. But if they just come to you, you don't have to speak to them, but it's how you basically how you carry yourself. You have to basically, whenever a police officer approaches you, you just have to be very calm, collected, and diplomatic with the officer. Because again, this is not about, do I want to fight this in court, or do I want to contest, or do I want to make sure we're Black people, Black lives matter. Black lives matter, but your life matters too. So you have to make sure how you put yourself to that officer, you are protecting your life. And you got to play the game right. That's what I say. Because I mean, I'm not saying I see it all, but a lot of these cases that I too would kind of make and give a little piece of advice is, even if you have PTSD or there's issues when a police officer comes to you that you immediately want to be defensive or become very aggressive for whatever, or not even aggressive, but very emotional, you got to take a breath, because a lot of that will play into what then comes out of the officer's actions. For example, I did observe some of the video with George Floyd. I also observed the video with the individual in Alabama. What was Armand?
George Ahmaud Arbery. Wait, the one Ahmaud Arbery was the one where he was jogging. Are you talking about that one? Oh,
exactly. Okay. It's just, you guys, it's kind of like what I, even when I was a defense attorney, I was always by my senior attorneys always said, tell your clients to pick their battles. And when you already know what possibility you would be coming into with a police officer. So I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form George Floyd was in the wrong in any way, shape, or form. He was being it was completely unlawful and illegal what the officer did to him and was pursuing to do to him. But he has to understand he needs to protect his livelihood. So if you see an officer come to you aggressively, don't feed back with that aggression. Don't buy into that aggression. Calm, collect. As you recall, because I recall watching part of the testimony with the Floyd case where there was a little older African-American man who was witnessing the interactions between the officer and George Floyd. And he kept yelling in a way, loud, not yelling, but telling George Floyd, calm down. It ain't that deep. Just calm down. Just chill out. It's not that deep. And he was doing that for a reason, because he knew that because George Floyd was acting he was very excited and he probably did have PTSD, the officer was going to react even more. And so all my advice is you ever come across a police officer, yes, you have rights. Yes, you know that this person is being unlawfully at those times that you believe they're committing unlawful acts. But what you need to do is leave it to the court. Leave it to when you go to court. When you're having those interactions with the officer, this isn't court. This isn't about you being found, there's no substantiation to what's going on. This is about your life. So you need to pretty much play it that I'm trying to protect my life. Calm down, abide by the police officer, make sure you notate the officer's ID and all the information you can grab from the officer so you can take that to the court, to your attorney, to make sure that officer is held accountable. But you need to focus on these encounters with officers. This isn't about, I'm going to protect my rights. This is my right. You need to pick your battles, be calm, go through the process, and then deal with what you're going to deal with against the officer outside of your interaction with the officer. That's the main advice that I would give to these interactions that individuals have. And there have been interactions where people have been doing nothing, such as the man coming out of the home carrying a Subway sandwich. There's situations that we just can't avoid. And that's why I know some people may not be happy, some people may, but the fact that body cams, video footage, technology has now come into play has made a big role. They played a big role in these cases now. And so if anything, I always tell people that even though you see this now of what's going on with our community, don't be surprised or don't even think that these things going on with George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, weren't going on in multitude even more or less back in the day. It just was not on video. So I think people need to realize that you need to be calm, because even if it's on video, that doesn't mean your livelihood is not going to be affected if you're the person in question being investigated. So it's all about how you handle yourself during these interactions. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, we can also too record as well from a safe distance. Yeah. As the court has said, we can record. We can't necessarily interfere with what the police are doing, but we can record it. And I think that if you didn't have those recordings, the recording from the young girl from the George Floyd case, he wouldn't have, his family wouldn't have been able to see justice for his murder from Derek Chauvin. And so what about one of the big questions I get with the what to do when stopped by the police? What are your suggestions about what to do when stopped by the police when you're in your car? Like, what would you do if the police come up on you, they drive up on you? What would you suggest that people do?
Yeah, the protocol is if you see the police coming, immediately hands down, hands either on the steering wheel or hands down. Don't start moving around because you don't, just like we have emotions that can kind of stir us up or do something, the officer is a human too. They have emotions too. And they're trained. And even though they're trained, that doesn't mean their own individual self isn't going to start coming out. So you got to be still. And if they ask you for any documentation, don't start a conversation with them, such as, well, why are you coming to stop me? Just give it to them. Like I said, all of the issues that follow through with the encounter or follow after the encounter or during the encounter can be handled with an attorney that goes to court to handle the matter. But you need to just pretty much comply with what
that's what Detective Brian Fountain with Detroit Police Department, he and I have done some collaborations. He does what to do when stopped by the police programs too. And he said, comply now, complain later. It's like, we want people to live to tell their tale.
Exactly.
We don't want, it's unfortunate. I mean, like you said, some situations where Black and brown people are being brutalized by the police cannot be avoided, but some might be able to be avoided just based on the way you conduct yourself. If you're respectful to the officer, give the real name, not a fake name, that can make a world of difference.
And make sure you notate. Just, I know people may not, like if I look at something, I can't memorize something like that, but notate as much as possible. The badge number, the name, make sure you can ask the person their name. Just make it, like, ask it in a very diplomatic way and respectful way. Ask for their name, get all of the identification you can of that officer. Because that's going to be important, because you don't want to be so emotionally stirred that you can't remember anything. You got to remember that, because that's very important. And as you see nowadays, especially with technology, there you can buy an actual cam that you can stick in your car from Costco, from all types of Amazon. Right. That's not illegal. Phones aren't illegal. So it's good now that we have so much technology. That's another aspect. So you can back your story or your case where the officer may say something different about the stop to justify what may have happened, that we have technology that can really help cover.
Okay. And then what are your thoughts about, I made a recent video on what to do when stopped by the police, and then I also made a recent video on the George Floyd and Policing and Justice Act, and it's passed the House, but it's held up in the Senate. What are your thoughts on what it's going to take, what it would actually take to get get everybody on board, as far as getting some Republican senators on board to vote so it can pass and get into the president's hands, and the laws can be in place to protect Black men, women, and children from being brutalized by some wayward cops?
Yeah, unfortunately, so much of our law is placed in the political arena. If we could just extract the law out of the political arena, we would have, I think personally, we would have such a more calm, balanced nation. But whenever any law comes into play, it becomes political. So in terms of how can we, get lawmakers to move towards the Policing Act, it's going to be difficult, because most lawmakers that are on the other side, Republican, Democrat, whatnot, they're going to be turning towards their political interests versus the actual community, safety, personal interests. So I think that's one of the issues, but we really need to just focus on really the rubrics, the ground rules of what is really pushing these legislation. It's just really going to be about just trying to understand really what the basis of this legislation is for. Clearly, it's very obvious and very knowing that this matter that was held against George Floyd, that he was unfortunately killed, everyone saw it. And as you notice, everyone notices it's not just a Black support. Everyone came in support of that. Yeah. So I think if we had some type of public input with this legislation, such as it put on the ballot, I think that would be a much stronger way for us to move forward with this policing. But again, for it to be put on the ballot, the legislation has to, approve for it to be put on the ballot. So it's all about just trying to put really personal, what could affect all of us, regardless of politics, to really, really focus and hone in on those issues, to really try to get this ballot on the deck, because there's issues in terms of training, in terms of screening police officers, in terms of basically giving them a timeline when they can actually start moving into different transitions of different steps and levels of their actual duties. All of those are so important and they need to be addressed because there's all these issues of immunity, qualified immunity. But as we see, for example, this is an example. Have you noticed that when there's a cross, there's an intersection, and maybe there might be a stop sign, there's about 5 car accidents that people die. And you notice the actual township or the city is not putting a stoplight there. But the more accidents that come about 100, 300, suddenly you see a light. Now, I don't want this to be the situation with the policing act, that the more deaths, the more and more and more and more, finally they agree to do a justice and policing act. This is a situation where we need to cut the statistics out and focus on the plain actual dealings that are going on in our community, that it doesn't matter how many, there's too many already. So we really need to just focus on trying to push this and just have stories and just see if we can find a way to take the politics out of this, to really put it in what really we need to have done in the community.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, because I know we are trying to get the George Floyd and Policing and Justice Act passed on a federal level. And, I made the video and I encourage everybody to reach out to their senators, or even some of the senators that are Republican that are holding up progress. But on the local level, that's certainly something that can be explored as, putting it on the ballot when people vote. Let the people decide what they want, as far as improving, the policing and qualified immunity and things of that nature, because the people, that's who are affected. Everybody's affected. I mean, when I do the videos, I've started the videos, what to do when stopped by the police because of what was happening to Black folk. But I mean, it's the tips that we've talked about that you're giving or that I've given on the videos, they're universal. They can be used by anybody, really.
Exactly.
Make sure that, I look at it as, my background. I know you have a background as a singer. I have a background as a dancer. I'm looking at this as like a choreographer, like we've seen on TV, bad choreography where that results in, again, the brutalization of Black men, women, and children. So it's like, I want to see good choreography. Good choreography is making sure that we're promoting positive interactions with the police.
Yes.
Weeding out the cops that are bad apples, that are racist, and putting in people, I know some of the police have said they're having difficulty recruiting people. So it's like, there's some of you guys out there in the audience, you may be meant to become police. Like, I have one of my guidebooks is from an activist that decided he was going to become a police officer. He's African American. He became a police officer, and then he started a mentoring program. So sometimes it may not just always be trying to change the system from the outside. It may be having to, like, if you feel compelled to go in the inside and change the system. And because I know people would certainly want to have more folks that are comfortable with the Black community and working from the inside, as opposed to somebody that's trigger happy, that's gonna, because what we're seeing a lot of is like people getting shot first and then ask questions later. And it's like, I don't want you coming. That's why I tell people, I don't always call the police. I wouldn't call the police unless it's an absolute emergency, because you call them and they might bring more harm to you than if you would have just worked it out with your family members. So yeah.
That's one thing. We actually, me and Attorney McCoy and several other attorneys participated in several forums, presentations in Ann Arbor regarding what to do when stopped by the police. And I was a panel member. And one issue that I did actually discuss is, as we see, you shouldn't be judged by the color of your skin, but the content of your character is more so where people lean to actually see and know who a person is. I think a very important aspect of this issue with the police and the community, as I discussed in the previous presentation, is that we need to start getting to know who we are, getting to understand who we are to some point. And the police need to start putting on programs, projects where they have more interactions with the community and the community that is not like them. Because I think a lot of these issues that are coming up with issues with people like involving the police is because there's a preception of a person, there's a stereotype. And as we all know, even if you're Asian, Indian, white, Black, if you look at the person, you're going to prejudge them. But if you start getting to know the person by speaking with them, interacting with them, knowing who they are, what their character is, the likelihood of you as an officer coming into contact with that person or people of that type is going to be less aggressive or high interactions in a negative way, because it's psychology. If you know someone and you understand those type of people or the person, the I guess the percentage of you, or the chance of you actually going toward that person because of your perception, is going to be destroyed. It's going to go down. So I think we need to put on more interactive programs, activities with officers, and there are some being done, because I think that will help really wean and dispel this issue with people coming into contact with an officer. Officer thinks this, the person thinks this, and then there's a clash. We got to get to start communicating and getting to interacting with us more. And that's why I'm glad Martin Luther King brought what he brought. And it was peace, positivity. It wasn't against, it was for. Because we have to know each other. You know each other, your brain starts working to get to know that person, like the person, understand the person, instead of trying to kill the person.
Right. And I think that, well, first, I would just like to make sure the audience is aware. Those, I do have video footage from the first programs that we did on what to do when stopped by the police. You know, I did some of the first ones with Vanzetti Hamilton Bar, and that's on my Robyn Legal website. So you can see Attorney White as a panelist and a part of those programs. But yeah, to your point, I do think that's why I do programs or do interviews like with you and with attorneys, and I try to talk about preventative programming, because you and I, we've seen it. We're inundated with courts and people being, mostly Black people, poor white folk, working class white folk too, who come into the system, and they're flooded in the systems, and they don't know their rights, and they don't begin to learn their rights until after they're already in trouble, and we're called in to do damage control. And then it's like, it's depressing, because sometimes there's only so much we can do. If you've given a statement, like I always say to people, zip it. Don't give a statement to the police, zip it. And you know, be cooperative. Don't pull away if they're trying to arrest you, because it may be an illegal arrest, but if you're resisting them, you could get an additional charge for resisting obstructing. And live to tell your tale. So you could call myself or Attorney White, so that we want to hear. I would like to see like a scenario, like I did a program at Martin Luther King High School, and they said that they took my tips. There were some kids that had an interaction with the police, and they got out of the situation. Nobody was harmed. Nobody was arrested. I want to hear more of that. I don't want to. I want to, like as I said, it's like the good choreography and the bad choreography. I want to see more positive stuff in the news happening in the Black community and police interactions. Them getting the people who have murdered somebody unjustly. You know, I want to see more of that, less of like just us having this feeling like there are some cops that are like KKK cops coming after Black folk. And you know, like it's like I've lived in South Africa. It's like it's an apartheid experience in America. And so I know we're pressed for time, but I also wanted to ask you, Rita. I know you're Nigerian, and I know my ancestry DNA came out highly. The highest concentration was Nigeria. Nigeria, Benin, Togo, and Congo. But so you're Nigerian and you're Nigerian American, and I know you keep active with the cultural events in you know, going to Nigerian cultural events. And why do you think it's important to do that, to kind of keep up with your culture, things of that nature?
Well, it's important because I was born in Ann Arbor. I was raised in America. I've been to Nigeria twice in my life. And if you have that opportunity, that's the main issue, is you have that opportunity to grasp or have some foundation to your culture or some knowledge, take advantage of it. Take advantage of it, because I'm basically first generation Nigerian American, because my parents immigrated from here in the 60s. However, just think about it, as we back in the day, African Americans, they came here involuntarily, and they weren't able to take their history, because of, clearly, as we know, it was pretty much banned. It was pretty much banned. It was taken away from them. It was wiped out. Right. So that's where I'm at too, because just because I have Nigerian parents, that doesn't mean I'm going to be able to carry the culture. It has to be a very proactive action on my part, because my parents, we're not going to live forever. So my goal, my purpose is to make sure I maintain and retain the culture. So with my children, with the next generation of my family, they have that culture too, because it's the same thing. I could be the same thing as an African American, not know really much about my culture. So that's why I take proactive steps to ask my parents questions about the Nigerian community, ask them about the culture, because there's a lot of very interesting nuances to my culture that I didn't even know until probably a year ago. So it's just good to maintain and retain, because we don't want to lose anything in our culture, especially us as African Americans. We want to make sure we know and keep as much as possible, because as you see, the Egyptians had a way of keeping their cultures and maintaining and passing it along by hieroglyphics, but we don't. And as people may not know, in the African community, Nigerian community, they don't write their history. They don't write things. They just orally tell it. So it's passed on orally. So that's why it's just so important for me to attend Nigerian events and just be involved so I can maintain that understanding of my culture.
Right. Like that you have griots that can retain the history. So this has been wonderful, Rita. I'm excited we got to do this interview. So folks, this is attorney Rita White. I will share her website and her contact information on the YouTube video and the Facebook. And stay tuned for more programming. You can go to the Black Women Lawyers, like our Facebook page. We're on Facebook. We have a website to see more of the programming that we're doing. Just to uplift people, and thank you, Rita, for being a wonderful attorney, advocate, friend, and just exhibiting what you can be as an attorney, as a Black female attorney. How you've been a prosecutor, you've been a defense attorney, you've done the whole gambit with your field of practice. And you also mentor other attorneys, and I think that's important that we do that we give back, because we wouldn't be here without other folks mentoring us.
Yeah, exactly.
So okay, so you have a blessed day, and ladies and gentlemen, this has been Robyn McCoy with Robyn Legal, with attorney Rita White, president of Black Women Lawyers Association of Michigan. And so everybody be blessed, and stay tuned for more programming from us, and I'll talk to you later, Rita.
And I just want to give a plug into Attorney McCoy. She has been so integral in terms of spreading community awareness and running these interviews along with political copy. So Robyn, I want to give a plug out to you, is please follow Robyn, because she has so much information and so many updates and so much awareness that needs to be brought to our community on a daily basis. So please keep tagged on to Attorney McCoy.
Thank you. Like, share, subscribe, and if you have any ideas, send me an email if you have any suggestions about programming. So, okay, well, you have a blessed evening, Rita.
You too. Thank you so much for having me speak.